Hello, everybody, and welcome once more to Cave Cat's movie and TV reviews, again with your favorite host, the one and only Cave Cat. Wow, it's been quite a while since I last used that introduction, hasn't it? But anyway, for today's episode, it's time for me to review a show that I never thought of doing a review of, up until just a little while back, but never got around to it. Until now! Ladies and gentlemen, today I will be reviewing McGee and Me. This is an interesting one because the show is a little bit similar to that of Dog City, which I did a review of in the previous episode, being that the show contains both live action and animation. So not only is this the fifth time that I've reviewed a live action series, but also the second time that I've reviewed a show that contains both live action and animation as well. So anyway, what am I talking about, you ask? Well, to start off, McGee and Me is a Christian series that was created by two guys named Kinsey Johnson and Bill Myers in association with Focus on the Family and Tyndale Productions, now called Tyndale House. This is actually also the third time that I've reviewed a Christian series, following VeggieTales and Superbook. But anyway, it's time to get this review started. McGee and Me tells the story of 11-year-old Nicholas Martin, a young boy who has incredible artistic talents, much like myself, but these talents are not just limited to drawing. He's also talented in creating various Rube Goldberg-esque inventions, even if some of them have very basic uses. For example, the intro of the series shows that a rather complicated device that Nick invented just works a pencil sharpener. A pencil sharpener made from a gumball machine that also doubles as a goldfish aquarium for some odd reason. But anyway, the show focuses on Nick and his family living with his grandmother in the town of Eastfield, Indiana, after moving in with her in the very first episode. His family consisting of his father David, his mother Elizabeth, his older sister Sarah, his younger sister Jamie, his grandmother, as mentioned earlier, and even the family dog just named Whatever. I'm not making this up. That's literally the dog's name, Whatever. Each episode follows the adventures of Nick as he interacts with his family and even his friends at school. But his very best friend is McGee, a 6-inch tall, blonde-haired, red-shirted, and no, this is not a Star Trek reference, suspenders-wearing Caucasian cartoon character from Nick's imagination. Much like Dog City, this show has a few similarities with Calvin and Hobbes, involving the main character interacting with his imaginary friend, who may not be quite so imaginary. So yeah, when I say that the show contains both live action and animation, that's because the show makes use of what TV Tropes refers to as the Roger Rabbit effect, which, for those of you who don't know, is when a live action character interacts with an animated character, either in a live action or animated setting. It makes sense, especially since the trope takes its name from the 1988 film Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But moving on from that, the show, being that it's a Christian show, involves Nick, and to a lesser extent McGee, learning various life lessons in each and every episode. The lessons that they learn range from telling the truth, being humble, obeying your parents, showing compassion to others, being brave and taking responsibility, dealing with jealousy, making right choices, and many more. Much like VeggieTales would later do, they teach these lessons in a humorous and often tongue-in-cheek manner, while still doing so in a gentle and rather down-to-earth manner. Not once do any of the lessons detract from the uplifting atmosphere of the series. Also, at the beginning of nearly every episode, we're treated to a segment of Nick reading a passage from the Bible that fits with the lesson of the corresponding episode, before seguing into an animated segment featuring McGee acting out the lesson being relayed in the segment, in almost a similar vein as that of the claymation vignettes from Mr. Bogus. Not only do these segments do a great job of letting us know what the lesson is ahead of time, but they're also pretty humorous without overhyping themselves too much. Also, as I've mentioned earlier, besides Nick and his family, and McGee, we're also treated to his friends at school, such as Lewis, who he first meets in the very first episode, Renee, who's basically like the Little Miss Snarker whose parents divorced, with her living with her mom, Philip, who was first introduced as a nervous and introverted geek, almost like Dilton Doily from the Archie comics, and also the school bully, Derek Kreider. Derek is basically like the main antagonist of Nick and his friends in almost every episode that he appears in, until the Christmas episode, where we learn that he came from an abusive family, as well as also working with a tough gang member, to which he's able to change his ways after Nick shows him compassion. Of course, Nick is a pretty good character himself, because he's supposed to be the main character, and we're supposed to feel sorry for him and sympathize with him whenever he finds himself in a situation that seems well beyond his control. His parents are also loving and supporting characters to Nick, helping him whenever he's troubled by something and struggling to do the right thing. Grandmother Martin is also the loving and matronly figure to Nick as well, even sometimes helping him, such as the episode where Nick is jealous that a new student who is as equally good at drawing as he is keeps showing him up art-wise. But fortunately, Grandmother Martin is able to give Nick a pep talk that snaps him out of his jealousy. And as for Nick's sisters, Sarah's the older sister who sometimes picks on Nick, but she can also prove herself to be helpful and comforting to Nick in times of need. Jamie is basically more well-behaved than both Sarah and Nick, but there are times when even she can sometimes be annoying, such as in the final episode where she got sick with chicken pox, so Nick was able to invent an intercom allowing her to communicate with the rest of the family about what she needs. And of course, we get to the one character that really stands out the most in the entire series. That would be none other than McGee himself. McGee is supposed to be the conscience and morality pet to Nick, despite the fact that the advice he gives Nick isn't always very good. In a way, he's kind of like Mr. Bogus, being that he's rather goofy, crazy, kind of klutzy, and tries his best to help Nick when he's having a problem, even if he has absolutely no idea what he's doing in that regard, almost like Mr. Thickley from Tasmania. In fact, a lot of the situations that McGee gets himself into are just so comical and so over the top that you can't help but laugh at his antics, especially if the mood needs to be lightened after a rather somber or melancholic scene. Although at least the comedic situations don't stretch themselves out too much or overstay their welcome, like you would see happen in, say, the third season of Adventures from the Book of Virtues. We're also treated to animated segments featuring McGee going on his own adventures, with these adventures also being in tandem with the various lessons, for the most part, while also showcasing just how much of a comic relief character McGee can be. You can really tell that Nick put a lot of heart and soul into McGee's personality when creating him, as shown in both of the show's intros. Wait, both of the show's intros? I bet you're wondering what I mean by that. Well, I'll explain it in a little bit. First off, in 1992, which was 3 years after the show premiered in 1989, the very first episode, The Big Lie, aired on ABC in January for a potential run on television, even airing as a part of the ABC Weekend Special. Then a few months later, in September 1992, the 8th episode, Take Me Out of the Ball Game, also aired on the ABC Weekend Special. However, when these episodes aired on ABC, there was actually a problem. The spokeswoman for ABC at the time demanded that these episodes be edited for commercials, but also that certain Christian references be removed from the episodes, supposedly to make it more marketable for television. It's almost similar to what happened when VeggieTales aired on the cable block on NBC well over a decade later, when that show also had certain Christian references removed just to try and meet the standards and practices of network television abstaining from using religious references. Why is it that ABC, NBC, and CBS have to be so stingy when it comes to airing Christian content on any of their schedules? With the exception of when ABC airs the Ten Commandments every Easter, especially considering that ABC also aired the Kingdom Chum specials, which also had Christian references on the ABC Weekend Special. That's actually pretty hypocritical if you ask me. On the bright side, at least both the show and VeggieTales did get a chance to air on television, though at the cost of having the Christian references removed. But at least it's not as bad as when the Garbage Pail Kids cartoon ended up getting pulled from CBS's Saturday morning schedule just because of those parents groups that threw a fit about the show being too gross for children's television. But I've already talked about that in the past, so it's time to move on. Anyway, as for what I'm talking about in regards to the show having two intros, the reason for this is because the first 9 episodes of the series originally aired from 1989 to 1990 until the show took a hiatus for 3 years, much like Adventures from the Book of Virtues did after it ended its second season. Then in 1993, Focus on the Family and Tyndale Productions produced 3 more episodes, which brought the series up to 12 episodes, though it baffles me why they didn't go for 13 episodes like most shows do. But anyway, these additional episodes became known as the New Adventures of McGee and Me, and with these episodes came a brand new intro that still showed Nick drawing McGee and McGee coming to life again, but in a more streamlined and fluid fashion. That's because while the animation in the first 9 episodes was done in a more graceful style, the final 3 episodes of the series had animation done by Star Toons, who also worked on several Tiny Toons episodes, Animaniacs, and even the animated segments of Secret Adventures, another Christian series. The quality of Startoons is pretty in between, because one minute the animation is very fluid and bright, and another minute it can be a bit stiff and jerky at times. Also, in the final episodes, it's explained that Nick and his friends are now attending junior high, but because of the 3-year hiatus in between the ninth and 10th episodes, Nick and his friends look more like they're in high school for some odd reason. That's kind of a plot hole, if you ask me. As for the show as a whole, I think it is still a pretty entertaining series that Christians of all ages will enjoy. There are a couple or so duds in the episodes here and there, but that shouldn't keep anyone from enjoying the show in and of itself. Does this show get a good score after what I said about it? You bet your art table that it does. 8 stars, baby! In the words of McGee himself, it's like I always say, most of the time a Christian series can have the potential to teach various life lessons to its target audience while still being fun and entertaining without bashing the lesson over your head, like VeggieTales in the House would later do. I've mentioned this before. I did like VeggieTales in the House. It's still a guilty pleasure of mine, but I didn't really like how it contradicted several things from the original VeggieTales series. Fortunately, McGee and Me doesn't do any of those things, instead staying true to its format and teaching the lessons in a fun, energetic, and even sometimes down-to-earth way. We really need more Christian kids shows, whether they're animated or live action, to follow in the footsteps of VeggieTales or even McGee and Me. The ones that we've got today just seem a bit too babyish for one's standards, because they're just nothing shows that tend to meander about with the format and the lessons. At least the first 2 seasons of Adventures from the Book of Virtues actually took the time to tell the stories very faithful and in a fun and entertaining way, without making them sound too boring, compared to what they would later do in the 3rd season of the show. After all, McGee and Me is just one of those timeless shows that really gives anyone who watches it a sense of security, and it would be unthinkable if they would actually try to remake or reboot the show. So I think it's best that the show be left well enough alone as it is. So there. Well, anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Cave Cat's movie and TV reviews. Like before, don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for whatever comes your way, if it's more episodes or other videos. So until next time, see you in the future!